Welcome to episode 30 of 1530. Sounds weird to say that. We're covering the U.S. Open and then obviously all the craziness that's happening right now. It's the men's quarterfinals today. And we'll get into the matches that just happened. One of the two matches have been played, but also want to cover the crazy turn of events with the top seed obviously on Sunday, and it's a big opportunity for the young guns, so we'll be going into that as well. But first of all, we'll start us off with the stat of the day. So the stat of the day is 84%. So that is the average first serve points won for the player that's remaining in the draw, or actually just got eliminated from the draw. So Andrei Rublev, if he gets his first serve into play, he has an 84% chance of winning that point, which is the best in the U.S. Open right now. So kind of we'll talk about that, and because he really is kind of a smaller guy, but he packs a big punch. So we'll talk more about his game and how he can do that. But it's a pretty interesting stat. That's a very high number. If you chart matches and see what your first serve points one is, that's a very high number. So if he can keep that up, he can keep punching above his weight. That'll be good for him in his tennis as he's continued to improve. He's at a career high ranking right now. But yeah, I've been really impressed with the young Russian. But Matt, what are your take on the U.S. Open so far? It's been kind of a crazy one with no fans and many other things.
Yeah. At least they're able to play, right? I mean, you have months and months of no sports from the pandemic, shuts everything down. So, I mean, it is what it is, right? Obviously, we knew going into it was going to be a different situation and a unique situation. You've got Fed. He was going to be out anyway, I guess, from surgery, but Nadal decided not to play, and it was jokes to lose, right? We all knew that coming in, but I'm glad tennis was able to start up again. I think it's good. I think it needed to happen.
Yeah, same. It's been really interesting with the Hawkeye Live system. So on every court except for the main two courts, Arthur Ashe Stadium and the Louis Armstrong Stadium, they have Hawkeye Live. So they don't even have line judges, which is really interesting. It just uses the Hawkeye and then it makes a call if the ball is out. And it's like a person making the call, but it's using the camera system. So it's been funny. Some of the players were kind of confused because the Hawkeye Live system was also used on all the courts last week at Cincinnati Open, which was really played in New York, right? So that's been kind of interesting for some of the players that they're not used to it, or they were getting used to Hawkeye Live, and then you go back to the normal challenge system on the top two courts. But I think, from what I've been watching of that system's been working out really well. And the players, I mean, they can't really challenge, but they can just ask to see it again, and it's always the same, and it shows, yep, the ball landed on the line or landed out. And then I think it's led to a lot less stoppage in play and a lot less arguing. So, and you're getting the right call, right, which is what we want. It's instead of the challenge game where, he should have challenged there. It was totally in. Well, challenge was kind of dumb anyways, right? But it'll be interesting to see with social distancing. That's kind of their excuse to implement it. But I don't know. I mean, with it being so good and maybe positive feedback from the players, we could see that being the new standard in the future maybe. So.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece that you turn over to I know a lot of people get frustrated with automating a lot of stuff and things, but that's something that's probably effective, right?
Yeah.
They got the fallibility of human eyes, checking lines, and these guys hit the ball so hard and so fast and those paper thin lines, right? And so having an automated system there just to check it every time, it just makes sense if you can get that.
Exactly. It's not a game of inches anymore. It's a game of millimeters with how hard and how fast and how close the lines these guys hit. So it's been interesting to watch. But we'll go ahead and talk about some of the best matches so far. Any matches that stand out to you, Matt, that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I honestly have been pretty busy. Haven't been able to watch too much of the tennis. I can talk a little bit about Djokovic.
Yeah, that's a big match. Let's talk about that one. What do we got there?
I didn't look at any of the stats. I turned the match on 5 minutes before. I turned it on 5 minutes before the match ended, right? So I watched Carreño Busta, his opponent, go down love 40 on his serve and claw back and hold. And then I think he broke Joke in that game. Mm-hmm. So Joke in the on Carreño Busta's serve, got mad at one point and hit a ball into kind of the sideline to the stands. He was obviously mad. I mean, was he, did he hit the ball at the end of his own serve out of frustration? Who knows? But I'm sure everybody's seen it by now. Joke, as they were changing sides, turned around to hit the ball to the corners, I guess, to get the balls back, and unfortunately ended up nailing the line judge in the throat.
Yeah,
so
unfortunate.
You understand the rule. It's there, right? He hit a player, ended up defaulting. And yeah, I mean, you can't really argue with the decision being made off of the rules that are in place. But you have to wonder if that ball was really hit that hard. You have to wonder, there's no way it was intentional.
No.
And that's man alive, is that a big impact on the tournament and the outcome?
Absolutely. On the top seed, right? I don't think I've heard of that.
Yeah.
I've heard of players being defaulted for this. One that wasn't a Grand Slam match was one where Shapovalov got really mad as an indoor match and hit a ball. He thought he was going to hit it up into the stands or at the ceiling, and it came down and hit the chair umpire actually right in the face. And so, like, in the eye. And so he was just sitting here, clutching his eye. And so obviously he was booted from that. But again, right, different scenarios. The Davis Cup, that wasn't the top seed. And like you said, Djokovic didn't hit it that hard, but, it was just unlucky placement, unlucky, where the line judge was there, not her fault, obviously, but just kind of an unfortunate circumstance. But it opens up a lot of opportunity, right? We're going to have the first time slam winner since 2014, right? It's 6 years when Marin Cilic came and beat Nishikori, because Federer and Djokovic respectively fell out in the semis. So that's a huge opportunity for the young guns. So that's kind of joking about, right? The next gen, they're coming, but kind of by default, right? It's kind of my little joke there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Who do you have as the favorites that are remaining? Who do you think is going to take the title?
Yeah, for me personally, I think it moves over to Medvedev. He had a phenomenal tournament last U.S. Open. And he lost in the finals, right?
Yes.
But still played it incredible out of his mind. I mean, his whole hard court season last year was really nice. And he seems, I don't know, from what the little I've seen, he seems to be in the same mindset, same track this year. So even though he's, you've still got Thiem in there, you've got Sasha, who, maybe the no fans equals less pressure. He'll choke less, but he's already in the semis. So you've got competition there, but I think Medvedev is, for whatever reason, really feeling it on the hard court right now, especially in New York.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the more and more I watch him, and just so the listeners are aware as well, Medvedev, he hasn't dropped a set all tournament. He also has not been down a break all tournament. So he's playing phenomenally at the U.S. Open. You mentioned last year's hard court season. I didn't think, he could replicate those results. He hasn't necessarily replicated that, but he's playing very good at a very high level, and I do expect him to be the favorite. If you go to ultimatetennistats.com, they have him as a 40% favorite, 39% favorite to take the title now at this point, with Djokovic out and with a lot of the other players out, which I think is probably about right. They have Sasha as the second favorite at 28%, and then Thiem at 21%, which I think maybe makes sense at first. I'm like, why is Thiem not second there? But it's because Thiem has the unfortunate draw of having to play Medvedev in the semis if he gets there, if he beats Alex de Minaur tonight. So I think that's kind of the de facto final, in my opinion. Nothing against Zverev. He's a great player, but Thiem has been playing phenomenally as well, which is interesting because Thiem lost pretty badly to, I believe his name is Krajinovic, early in Cincinnati, like straight sets early in the tournament. People are like, oh, Thiem's playing horrible at the US Open. But now he's been able to adapt to these courts, and because they're very fast, which Thiem's usually not as good on the faster courts, but Thiem's been dominant. So I think Medvedev and Thiem will be kind of a popcorn match, maybe the de facto final. So definitely watch that one. And then on the other side of the bracket, you have Zverev and Carreño Busta, which surprising to see Carreño Busta in another semifinal. He made the semis, the U.S. Open in 2017. So kind of a counterpuncher guy, but he's playing pretty consistent tennis.
Yeah, well, and it's good to see it's good to see that even though he got past Joke by default, he didn't lose the next match, right? He's still there. So, he's sitting here saying, well, let's take advantage of this. It's interesting. I'm sure Cranial Boost is sitting here saying, what's going on? What's happening? But, he arguably would have taken that first set against Joke.
Yeah, exactly. He was on a break, right?
Yeah. He was serving for the set. Who knows? Yeah. Obviously, Joke is good at doubling down, but who knows? Who knows? That's
a great point. It's been super interesting. Before we get into the fourth round kind of covering, because I definitely want to cover all the stats from the Djokovic match, even though it was not even one full set, and then the rest of the matches from this week. I want to talk about the best match of the tournament that I've watched so far. It's been the Coric Tsitsipas match. So Tsitsipas came in, also rightly billed as one that could capture the title even before Djokovic went out. And Tsitsipas was playing some great tennis. He went up 2-1 over Coric and was up 5-1 in the fourth set. Coric somehow relaxed and started playing great tennis, was able to save 6 match points, win the tiebreak, win it 7-5 in the fourth set, and then win a tiebreak in the fifth set, even when he went down a break in the fifth, and he came back to win the tiebreak. So Coric, I don't know how he did it. Honestly, don't know how Tsitsipas kind of choked that, but very high-quality tennis. Lots of winners from either side, great passing shots. So I'll talk about those numbers here. We're kind of doing the similar thing as we've been doing the last couple of slams, is doing the serve mark or the serve factor and looking at that differential and just to see what it tells us. So on the serve factor, Tsitsipas had about a 110 serve factor. So again, that's combining your first serve in with your first serve points 1, adding it to your second serve points 1, kind of giving you a total how good you are on serve as far as points winning. So he's about at 110. Coric was not far off at 104. So that's a difference of about 6. And so over 5 sets is considered a tight match. I think in our straight setters that are a blowout, it's been about a difference of 30. So a difference of like 6, that's incredibly, incredibly tight. I think that's the tightest of all the matches that I've charted this week. And so just go into the numbers a little bit further. So they really did have about identical numbers. First serve points 1, 69% Coric, 67% Tsitsipas. Second serve points 1 was lower for Coric at 59%, Tsitsipas at 64%. And then they had almost identical first serve points in. Tsitsipas did much better on as far as aces. He had a differential of 13 between his aces and double faults. Coric only had 2. He was serving well, but just doesn't get as many free points on the aces there. And then as far as their winner ratio, Tsitsipas had a lot more winners than unforced. I think Coric just happened to be winning the right points there. Tsitsipas ended up losing 4 more points overall, 177 to 173. So you can tell this is definitely one of those matches where it really does come down to a point here or there. Think about it, Tsitsipas, that he closed out the match. I think he had 3 match points at 5-4 in the fourth set, even after blowing a break. So I just don't know how he does that with, especially as good of a server that he is. I think he tweeted after, he's like, this is like the strangest and the funniest or saddest thing in my career. And yeah, it really was amazing. He could have maybe gotten much further, but credit to Coric for hanging in there and playing some great tennis. As you can tell, the numbers, really nothing separates them. If you looked at these numbers identically, you would see maybe Tsitsipas by a hair, which, had he taken the match point, he could have won in 4 sets, but the numbers are just really right there. There's nothing separating these two guys.
I wonder.
And then we'll go into Djokovic. So you mentioned Djokovic and Carreño Busta. He went up a break on Djokovic, like you said, 6-5, was about to serve it out. But had the numbers continued, there's obviously a small sample size, 1 set. Had the numbers continued throughout the match, Djokovic would have won fairly comfortably. His serve factor was about 120. Anytime I've seen serve factors, in the above 110, the person's pretty likely to win. Carreño Busta wasn't doing bad either, though. His serve factor was at about 100. Get this. So Djokovic was winning 80% of his first serve points won. So not quite as good as 84% for Rublev, but 80%, that's like a Federer-like number there. You're not going to be dropping serve too often there. And he was getting his first serve points in at 71%. So credit to Busta for actually breaking him. because that's pretty difficult when Djokovic is winning numbers at that clip. And then, and there was only 2 points that separated those two guys in that set, that partially played set, 33 points to 31 points. But had the match continued at that rate with Djokovic serving that well, winning that many first serve points won, I think the match would have gone to Djokovic in a 3-setter, maybe a tighter 3-setter, but that's kind of what our differential there shows. Any thoughts on those numbers, Matt, between those two guys?
No, I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously you have a super small window. You only have one set of data. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure Joke would have pulled it out. It's always harder in these best of 5 to catch a fluke, right? To kind of get lucky and win your sets. It normalizes things a lot more, evens the playing field. So,
exactly.
No, yeah, I think that's.
I was wondering the same thing with because Serena again got pushed to 3 sets again today, and then she recovered, lost the first set, won the next 2. I thought about it. It's like if the women played 5 sets, how often would Serena lose? And I think the answer to that, like you're saying, right, it more normalizes it. The better players are going to win it out. I think Serena would get upset a lot less unless she was playing someone like Osaka or she was just really having a bad day. But kind of interesting how, with the women's game, there's always that small margin. And then when you go to like the Masters 1000s, not in the slams for the men, sometimes you can have, Kyrgios steal a couple sets off Djokovic or Federer and it can beat them, right? But in the slams, it's harder. So, yeah, it's just interesting. It favors people like Djokovic. But interesting that Djokovic had not even created a break point up to that point, which I guess is credit to Carreño Busta. Again, I didn't watch too much of the Djokovic match, but that's amazing. He didn't even create one break point up to that, and he's one of the best returners in the game. So I find that a little fascinating.
Well, and I wonder how much, because I don't know if you watched any of the Southern and Western, is that what it is? The tournament beforehand that was played there. And Joke was, I mean, yes, I understand he's Joke. He won the tournament, but there were multiple matches. I know in one match he hurt his shoulder, in that match as well as another one. He was sick. He was nauseous out there. So I have to wonder if he was fighting through something on a personal level at the same time. And obviously, I mean, he made it, to the 4th round or something? I mean, he was still playing well. He was still there. Mm-hmm. Joke's always going to compete, and he's always going to play well. He's always going to fight. But I wonder if that would have caught up to him at any point in this U.S. Open, the way that it started to in the Southern Western. It was against Raonic that he was not looking good out there. So.
Right, yeah, and Raonic, he won the first set 6-1, right? Like you're saying, over Djokovic. That's pretty shocking. Which, speaking of another guy, Raonic was taking out tons of people in the Western and Southern Open. He was playing so well on these faster courts, serving really good big, and everyone was saying, "Oh, Raonic could be a finalist here at the U.S. Open. He could go really far." And then he loses like 2nd or 3rd round to Pospisil, his Canadian, compatriot. So. Super weird, like I said, team did really bad at the Western and Southern. Is doing great here in New York. Raonic did the opposite, so it's kind of weird. They're the exact same courts. I don't know if it's just an unfavorable draw or what, but just interesting to see.
You got to wonder if that loss to Joke got him a little bit. I mean, you take the first set 6-1. Has he ever beaten Joke? I think they showed a stat that he's like.
It doesn't feel like he has for all the stuff.
Yeah, I think he's like 0-11 now, and a win there would have made him the number 1 Canadian player again. But so, I mean, in his head, there could have been, maybe a lot riding on that. Maybe that was still smarting when he was starting the U.S. Open. Who knows? But
yeah, it's a good point.
Definitely an unfortunate loss there. He had a real chance at doing something and still lost it.
Huge shame. Okay, let's see what else we got. Oh, yeah, and one thing to note, I don't think I pointed it out really. So, since Tsitsipas did have a better serve factor, this was one where our serve factor failed to predict Coric winning, right? So Coric had a worse serve factor by about 6, still ended up winning. This same thing happened to us in the Australian Open when Thiem beat Nadal in 4 sets. The sets were so incredibly tight, and it was, again, a difference about 5 on their serve factor. Nadal had a better serve factor by 5, but Thiem still won it out. A lot of tiebreakers. Again, Coric winning in tiebreakers. So this is, again, showing when the match really is decided by a couple points, it really doesn't matter what your stats are. If you're that much better, you just have to win those important points. Again, we saw it with Federer and Djokovic at the Wimbledon 2019 Wimbledon final. Federer was better in every statistical category by significant amounts, except for tiebreaks won, right? And that's what determined it. So again, I really like our serve factor formula and what it can do to predict matches, especially if someone continues on their trajectory of winning serve points the way that they do. But in really, really tight matches with tiebreaks, it doesn't do a lot to help. So just know that there is that uncertainty, but that's what makes tennis fun, right? That's what makes any sport, when it comes down to the fourth quarter, overtime, tiebreaks makes it fun. So it's been interesting to chart. We have Shapovalov. He had an incredible tournament. I know he's disappointed that he lost in 5 to Carreño Busta, but credit to him. He beat some great guys. He beat Goffin and some other players to get as far as he did. I think that's the furthest he had been, at least in the U.S. Open. Maybe in a major, I don't know. But his win over Goffin was a 4-setter. His serve factor was better by about 16. So again, if you look at 16, that's probably not going to be a straight setter. And it wasn't. It was a 4-setter, but it was still fairly decisive. Just looking at the numbers, kind of shocked. Goffin, he hit quite a few unforced errors, but Shapovalov, with his offensive game, right, as you know, huge serves, he'll come to net a lot. He hits that backhand up the line really well, and that forehand. He's just a very dynamic player, very fun to watch. He can get a little bit loose and miss some. That's what happened to Carreño Busta. Honestly, he was getting broken a lot more than I'm used to seeing. But anyways, against Goffin, he played pretty fantastic. He won 71% of his points at net. He won 76% of his first serve points, which is great. 53% of his second serve. And Goffin, on the other hand, was a pedestrian. 44% on second serve points won and 68% on the first serve points won. So, right. So looking at those numbers, that's going to translate to a bigger difference on the serve mark. And it was about 17. So I love watching Goffin, but good for Shapovalov to see another Canadian do really well. Again, not the Canadian a lot of people were predicting. People had Raonic going further. Zverev in his fourth round match over Fokina. I guess he's a Spaniard. He had a serve factor greater than 28 difference over Fokina. So that just shows you that's going to be a very decisive straight sets victory, and that's what it was. He blew him out in every category. It wasn't a very close match. That's what kind of I was talking to you, Matt, earlier about, right? I felt like a lot of these matches in the fourth round, I'm like, oh, these are going to be a good match, and they were like complete blowouts. Coric over Thompson, Thiem over Felix, Ajay Aliazim. See if I mispronounced that one, but the young Frenchman who was playing dynamically, or not Frenchman, Canadian, but he speaks some French. I thought that match was going to be a great popcorn match. Thiem dispatched him. It was a tiebreak in the first set, I guess, but it was like 6-1, 6-1 after that, and it was not really that entertaining to watch. Lots of errors by the young Canadian. So, yeah, I guess I was a little disappointed at that, but still fun to see young guys go out and play hard. Thiem, this is one of the bigger differences of serve factor. He had a serve factor difference of 43 over Ajay Aliazim. So just decimated him. He had about 119 serve mark. Aliazim had 76, and Thiem just pretty much took every single point from him. So 40% second serve points won. The Canadian couldn't really catch a break. So Thiem is playing very, very well here. He's been able to adapt his game. I've been impressed at that. He used to just be a clay court guy or a slow court guy. Now he's able to, go far at the Australian Open, make that final, almost beat Joke. He's able to do it on these fast courts, and so I'm really impressed with his game. I think winning at Indian Wells over Federer last year really helped him. Let's see, kind of skip over some of these other ones. So like I said, a lot of them are blowouts. Okay, what I want to talk about is the Rublev-Berrettini match. This one was a 4-setter. If you look at the score, you wouldn't think it was very close. It was a lot of 6-3, 6-4s. I think it was 4-6, 6-3, 6-3 for Rublev. So he lost the first set and came back and beat him. But this match was very, very tight. It had a difference in serve factor of 7 or 6.5. So this would tell you this would be an incredibly tight, even a 5-setter. This was actually just a 4-setter. So this just showed you that it was a lot tighter than the score showed. And you could tell this by a lot of the points. Both guys, their first serve percentage wasn't that great. It was in the high 50s, 58 for Rublev, 56 for Berrettini. Of course, Rublev again was spectacular, 85% on his first serve points won. Berrettini was worse at 71%, but then Rublev won less than 50% on his second serve points won at 49, just barely below. And Berrettini was slightly better. There's a little bit of contrast of style. Berrettini was doing a lot of slice, a lot of coming to net, but yeah, this was extremely tight. Rublev is so fun to watch him go for every ball and hit it. He hits it kind of flatter. It goes for it really, really hard, but he was able to kind of outwork Berrettini, who had beaten him last year at the same round at the U.S. Open. So excited for Rublev, but again, this was a much tighter match. If you watched it, you know what I mean. It was much tighter than the score showed. So another interesting thing about the serve factor there. Same with Zverev and Coric in the quarterfinals. So this one was played yesterday. Zverev won. This was one where our formula actually didn't predict it as well. It was it showed that Coric had a better serve factor, 107 to 95 for Zverev. So it's a difference of 12. This would predict a tight four-setter going to Coric, but in fact, it was a tight four-setter going to Zverev. So again, this was a lot of tie breaks. Zverev lost the first set 6-1. After that, it was a bunch of tie breaks in a row. So again, just shows you tie breaks. There's more room for error there, right? Smaller margins. So this match, Zverev only won 4 more points than Coric, but both guys played great. Zverev's second serve points won, though, was horrible, 41%. He's got to do better than that. Carreño Busta will make him pay because he's a great counterpuncher. He needs to do better on his second serve, not double fault as much, and just get the ball in. Sometimes he was going for like a second serve that was 130. He's kind of doing 2 first serves. So I don't know, Matt. What do you think about Zverev and his you've probably seen that as well, right? His little serving woes. What does he need to do to get out of that?
Man, if I knew, I'd be playing right there next to him, right?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what the commentators saying. They're like, should he try 2 first serves? Should he just make sure he gets enough racket head speed? Should he go for it, put less on it? They were kind of going back and forth, kind of whatever was working for him. But their point is he needs to practice that a lot more if he's going to contend for majors. Otherwise, his other weapons, everything else is pretty much there. But that was a little frustrating for him. He kind of lost the first set because he had a couple bad double faults that cost him the break. So we'll see on Zverev. I think he can make the final. It's just like you're saying. I think I would more favor Medvedev or even Thiem in that case. So all right, and then kind of skipping ahead to a couple other matches. Yesterday was Carreño Busta and Shapovalov, which I mentioned. This is a 5-setter, but it's kind of deceptive because one of the fourth set was 6-0 Shapovalov. That's really just because Carreño Busta lost an early break, and then he kind of stopped trying to conserve his energy for the 5th. So Shapovalov, it shows that he won 7 more points overall. Really, that 4th set's kind of an outlier, kind of throwing out the data. So this one with the serve factor, though, it shows kind of what it was. It's a difference of 14. It actually makes it more of a tight 4-setter instead of a 5-setter. But either way, it's a 5-setter that's decisive. So kind of interesting that even though it went 5 sets, our kind of model shows that it knew it wasn't as close there, despite that 6-0 that kind of threw it off. So, yeah, Shapovalov was just disappointing on his first serve was fine. His first serve points were fine at 79%. It was his second serve points won and 40%. He just, once he got in the rallies, Carreño Busta was so much more consistent. He kept the ball deep, and Shapovalov would sometimes just go for shots up the line and into the net that he shouldn't have been going for. He wasn't being very patient in rallies. So his net points were, again, a great number of 74%. So, impressive Shapovalov there, him going to net, but he's got to get better in those second serve point situations, maybe being patient in the rally and not trying to force things. But still a great effort by the Canadian, and he's still young. He's got a lot of years left for him. So now we'll talk about the match today. We'll talk about the 2 Russians. So Medvedev and Rublev, they've known each other a long time, right? They're kind of some childhood friends. They played a lot. Practiced a lot together, including at this year's U.S. Open. Rublev played great. He was up 5-1 in the tiebreak in the first set and basically ended up blowing it. Medvedev had an amazing backhand that he was able to stretch and turn defense into offense and win the point. And I think that kind of turned that tiebreak around for him, and he was able to win it 7-5. So I think that frustrated Rublev. He ended up winning in 3 tight sets, another tiebreaker in the 3rd set. And our serve factor showed, with a difference of only 16, that, again, this maybe shouldn't have been a 3-setter, or maybe it was lucky to be a 3-setter. This one could have been more of a decisive 4-setter here, or a tighter 4-setter. So Medvedev was lucky to get through it in straight sets, especially with how well Rublev was playing. And Medvedev was starting to cramp up at the end too. So I think he was really glad to be done with the match, honestly, at that point. But Rublev kept with his 80% first serve points won. Medvedev did him better, though, 89%. I don't think we see numbers like that too often. And then 65% points won on the second serve points to 61% for Rublev. And then both guys were 59% and then 51% for Rublev for getting their first serve in. So pretty close numbers, but Medvedev was definitely better, and it showed. In those tie breaks, those small differences are kind of magnified and you end up winning the tie break. So definitely impressed with Medvedev. I do agree with you. He's the guy that can win it, but I think there's some pressure, right, on all the guys because Djokovic is out. They know this is a huge opportunity for them. So what do you think, Matt? What do you think about those numbers, what we got upcoming?
I think that Medvedev's first serve numbers, his first serve percentage in, not necessarily the one first serve points won, those are really low. I mean, he's in the 50s for these, at least the last 2 matches, 50%.
Yeah.
That's pretty inconsistent. I mean, you probably want to get those up to be a little more confident in your chances of winning anything. But I mean, they've served him well so far. He's moving forward, but I think going back to, you talk about your serve factor and some of these closer ones, it would be interesting to look at the serve factor in just the tie breaks alone, right? And I'm sure that we'd find that, I mean, so Medvedev, when he was playing Rublev, is that right?
Yep.
He won that. Yeah, he won. Well, yeah, so they had 2 tie breaks. I guess I was thinking of Zverev when he played George. He won the 3rd set tie break 7-1, right? So I'm sure that serve factor was heavily in favor of Zverev. Because, I mean, he won all but 1 point. Obviously, it's, 8 points, 13 points in the other tie break. So you've got a super small sample set. But I'm sure that serve factor would be more, at least for that set, more indicative of the outcome. But certainly interesting. I mean, those numbers, to look at that and makes sense. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely a good point. Because like you're saying, a tiebreak is almost like its own mini match or mini set kind of played there. Very small sample size. Unfortunately, they don't chart matches that way, or maybe we could have someone do that for us. Have that data would be nice. But I agree with you, right? Especially the tie breaks that are lopsided. You could definitely easily see that. But even the ones that are close, it's crazy. Well, literally 1 point can decide it. Win by 2, but 1 point. One lucky winner up the line, or one. Rublev had one that just kind of dribbled over the net, and there's no way that Medvedev could have gotten it. Luckily, that didn't decide things, but it let him get to his bigger lead. So there's so many different factors at play there. But I can also talk real quick about the winner average. So these are the matches that I charted from the 4th round on. So far the winners, the winners of the matches, they've had a first serve in percentage of 2% better than their opponent. So again, maybe it doesn't matter as much as the whole serve factor picture like we're trying to show. But first serve points won, 9% better. The winner's been 9% better. So we know, like you said, Rublev, I think that's won him a lot of matches. He's smaller, but he really gets a lot out of that first serve. And then the second serve point is actually also 9%, kind of the same. So that's maybe where I'd see Medvedev doing really well, or team Djokovic. The more I think about Medvedev, the more I just think he's another Djokovic, because he moves around the court so well. He's so defensively oriented, but then he can quickly turn that defense into offense. He can hit winners from so many different areas of the court, especially with that backhand. He's an amazing player to watch with that movement and that flexibility. So be interesting to see what he continues to do here at the Open. And then break points won, kind of predictably, it's 19% better right? The winner usually gives himself more opportunities and converts more of those opportunities. And then on the return points, this one is interesting. They usually win 10% more returns. And you can see that, especially with a Djokovic or a Medvedev who return really well. And then interestingly, winners don't seem to matter that much. It says 0.1 winners on average better. So usually, there can be matches where if you're spraying all over the court, but you're hitting more winners, it doesn't matter. Think of like Shapovalov having a lot more winners than Carreño Busta. Winners don't matter, but unforced errors and your ratio matters quite a bit. So, and then net points are similar to. I looked at the Australian Open when we charted it, and net points was also at 8%. The winner usually does 8% better on net points. At the French Open, it was 9%. So weird, kind of like 1% different. Could just be some noise there, but yeah, overall, there's some interesting points. You really got to get your first serves in. But it's more than that. You need to win those points, back it up, like we've seen Rublev do. So, yeah, kind of some interesting points there. Let's see. So you predicted Medvedev. Who do you think he'll face in the final? And what do you think? How many sets do you think it'll go? Do some predictions here.
Who's on the other side? It's Zverev and Carreño Busta, right?
Yep, Zverev and Carreño Busta.
I would love to see the Spaniard make it. Given second life right there.
Yeah.
I think that'd be cool. I don't know. That will be an interesting match. We might actually get a real good one here. I think Carreño Busta will do it. I'll put my money on him.
All right. I like that. He can make his first final.
Perfect. And I think Medvedev's going to take it in 4 sets in the final.
I also have Medvedev in 4 sets, but I have him over Zverev. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Write these down and see if we're right on Medvedev, or we could have Carreño Busta. Nadal might be happy about that. Get another Spaniard, get a title. We'll see. That'd be very unlikely though. That'd be crazy. But yeah, I think Thiem and Zverev have a very good shot as well. We'll see who comes to play. But yeah, that's what we have on the U.S. Open. As always. Check us out at cognitionsphere.com where we talk about these matches, and we have all these stats available. Our theme song is brought to you by somebody, so I'll cut that off. I can't remember who it's from. Oh man, let me click off first.